Wake up.
This is a brand new episode of Wake Up Right.
Wake up.
With your workout buddies, April and sometimes Jenna. Your HIIT podcast. Your much needed hit of encouragement, empowerment, and motivation to live and grow each day a little brighter.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wake Up Right.
Your HIIT podcast. I'm Jenna and
I'm April, and that was Noah. We are so excited about today's episode. Jenna will be on the whole thing, or most of it.
Yes. This is exciting. My first time.
I'm really excited. Well, and this will be interesting for me too, because it's the first person I've interviewed who probably knows nothing about me. I feel like so far, everybody's there are people that interact with my channel and stuff. And so this is someone who I've watched.
We're already expanding.
Yeah. But she hasn't watched me ever, I don't think. But so the person we have on the channel today is Simply Mander. Her name's Amanda, and she is a Crossfitter. So she has done the CrossFit Open. She's just awesome. She just finished her PT school, so her Nutrition Practitioner in TP. I don't know if I got the acronym right, but basically she is a nutrition practitioner, and she works for a nutrition company that essentially helps people learn how to eat. Today's video is sponsored by Built Bar. I love Built Bars. They are the perfect treat for me to take with me on a hike, to take with me on road trips. They keep me satiated. The typical Built Bar has about 17 grams of protein. They have low calorie nutrition profiles of anywhere from 130 to 180 calories. So I know if I have a Built Bar with me, I am good to go. It's going to keep me satiated, and I love it. They always have lots of flavors to choose from on their website. They also regularly have special flavors. Their special flavors typically are my favorite flavors. I love their cookie dough ones, so if you ever see that in stock, you should totally grab those. They've also done birthday cake. They have a grasshopper one that they've recently done. So good. Also, I really love essentially all of the Built Bars that have brownie in the title. Typically, I love those. My favorite, though, is the coconut almond, and I also love the German chocolate. And then I enjoy, well, this is the German chocolate. I enjoy the caramel one as well. They're so good. I also really like the orange one. They have an orange flavor, and it reminds me of Valentine's Day candy. So I really enjoy that. If you would like to try Built Bar, use the link in the description below or code AprilLauren10 to save 10% off of your order. I am so excited about Amanda. She has also talked, I don't know how much we'll talk about this today, but she has talked about mental health, her mental health, and what she goes through with depression and anxiety quite a bit. She also is recently married. She got married last fall. Absolutely beautiful. She was an absolutely beautiful bride. She is very feisty. It seems like, I don't know if she'll be feisty with us, but I say very feisty. I don't know if that's right or not. But she doesn't take any crap from anybody. She lets people know. Her. Yeah, I think so. I think you'll love her. I think this is going to be a good conversation. I am so excited.
Too.
You ready? Now it's time for the guest. That's how we should be like, hello.
Now, it's time for the main event of today's HIIT episode. Let's welcome our special guest.
How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Good. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. Catching up on kind of visiting your videos and stuff. And I don't know how I missed your gym tour video. I don't understand.
Oh,
yeah.
In my house?
Yeah, because I've always noticed, and I noticed that it changed, but I didn't really notice. Yeah. And I don't think I ever acknowledged the fact that you have, in my mind when I looked at it, I'm like, oh, it looks different. I don't know what looks different besides the color. And then you have a sauna. You have a sauna in your gym.
Yeah.
How is that?
I know. It's super cool. Austin actually uses a lot more than I do. He uses it like every single morning, but it's pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. It was just really hard to put together. Like, would not recommend that.
I wish I had a sauna again.
Yeah.
You know, I got the idea because I lived in Florida for so long and I really underestimated the winters here. And then when this past winter was so bad and I was like, I would literally do anything to just like sit in like a warm, just like tub. And the tub water was not cutting it. And then I was like, well, I'm going to go in the tanning bed. And then I was like, no, cancer. So let's not do that. So this is like the in between.
Yeah. No, I love it. That's awesome. Which, I experienced that a little bit when I moved to Utah. So I'm from like the South and moved to Utah and it was dark. But Jenna is from Finland. So
yes, and sauna is actually a Finnish invention and a Finnish word that has been just introduced to English.
Wow.
So I really miss it. One day I will have my own.
That's so awesome. So then, like, how did you guys connect?
our husbands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. That's awesome.
Yeah. So they had one of our husband's mutual friends had a Super Bowl party, and that's where we met. And even then, like, I wasn't sure because I knew I was going to be working out, and I didn't expect Yenna to love working out quite as much.
Yeah.
But she does, and we had a fun time in Missouri working out. I think that's about the only thing there was to do. That was pretty much the only thing we did.
I'm ready to move. I cannot wait.
I don't like that. It's pretty boring in the Midwest.
Yeah.
My husband's from Minnesota and he loves it. I'm just so bored here. There's nothing to do. We're just in the middle of nowhere. I would probably be happier or like more content if we were closer to a bigger city, but this is just
Yeah.
So where Fort Leonard Wood is, that's where my husband and I, we just moved, but we were stationed there, and that's where Yenna is now. But it's about an hour and a half from Springfield, and then about 2 hours from St. Louis, about 3 hours from Kansas City. So it's like Fort Lost in the Woods is its nickname, and it lives up to that nickname quite well.
Wow.
Target is an hour away, so.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
We only have Walmart, Price Cutter, and commissary to shop for groceries.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Holy crap. I thought I was in the middle of nowhere. By the way, sorry if you hear the lawnmower outside. There is a lawn company doing the lawn right now.
It's fine. I love your puppies. I have a puppy underneath me. Is Orho still underneath you, Yenna?
No, he's somewhere.
Yeah, so
he left.
We have 2 German Shepherds, Julio and Chipper.
Cute.
Yeah, and then Yenna has a pup.
I have a Rottweiler.
Oh, cute.
Yes. Yeah, so I really am excited to have you on. I feel like the knowledge that you have, the experience that you have in life and with your fitness journey, your fitness history, your education. Did you pass your test? You just took like your life.
Did.
Congratulations. I guess that's so wonderful.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I just feel like for anyone listening that maybe found the podcast through my channel, it's probably specifically weight loss. They're probably on a weight loss journey. Not always. There's people who, run marathons or are writing books and they just appreciate any kind of journey. So, but I feel like you have an amazing story and a perspective, and I would love it if you would just share a little bit about you and we'll get started.
Yeah. So, I started officially my fitness journey a little bit before 2014. I don't really recall if it was like the beginning or the end of the year, but I started because I was like super weak and small. And I was like, I want to be like those strong girls that I see on Tumblr. Okay. Like Tumblr was it back then. I loved Tumblr. And it was CrossFit stuff, but I just didn't know it was CrossFit. They would just like come across my feed and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I want to do that, And so I started at a regular gym. It was Gold's Gym nonetheless. And I just hated it. Like it was not my thing. I really didn't enjoy it. And I just was like, I wish I could find something that I loved. And so I had to talk to a couple of friends about it. And then I figured out that the people I was seeing were doing CrossFit. And so I I tell this story every time. People that have listened to podcasts with me, they're like, oh, here she goes again with the story. But it's literally true. And it's such a like prime example of how I am as a person. So I went to the CrossFit gym because I was like going to try it for the first time. And I pulled into the parking lot. And like, as I pulled in, all of these like super fit, like jacked people came out doing kettlebell farmer carries through the parking lot. And I was like, oh, hell no, I can't do this. And I drove away. And I did that like 3 times before I finally got the courage to go in because I was so anxious. And then once I did, I just fell in love with the entire like community, the workouts, everything. It was just a lot more fun for me. And not that I was like a, professional gymnast by any means, but I did gymnastics as a kid and dance. So like I had a little bit of an advantage in certain things that were fun for me, like the gymnastic style of CrossFit. So I just ended up falling in love with it. I spent a little bit of time competing in Olympic weightlifting, which was fun. And then once I met my now husband, he owns a gym here, but it's more like functional fitness. It's not CrossFit, but it's not bodybuilding. It's kind of like a hybrid essentially. And so that's kind of where my fitness has transitioned fitness wise, but my prime passion is in nutrition and helping people with food. So that's what I've always done, even with CrossFit, throughout all of that stuff with fitness. I always still have helped people with food, and I love nutrition.
That's so awesome. So I think it's so interesting that you had kind of like, I don't think it's gym intimidation, but I think that's what it's widely known as, but like you were intimidated when you first went. How did you overcome that? Because so many people have that. So many people.
I have that when I'm looking at CrossFitters. I'm like, I want to go, but I don't know.
Yeah, it was, dude, I don't know. Like, I just was like, I'm so mad because I want to do it. It looked so fun. And so I didn't go that day. What I did was I scheduled an appointment with the owner when there was no class.
That's awesome.
So like you can do that if you do have gym intimidation, especially in a CrossFit gym. And the owners are typically, for the most part, are so cool about it. And like, I just remember when I first met the owner of the very first CrossFit gym I went to, he worked with me one-on-one. So that way, like when I transitioned into the classes, I was a little bit more prepared and I didn't feel like I had no idea what I was doing. So if you have that in a CrossFit setting, I would definitely recommend either doing like the on-ramp classes, which is basically geared for beginners. So then you're on like an even field with other beginners, or asking if they offer one-on-one for the foundations. If it's like a traditional style gym, I would honestly bring just like a buddy. Like if I had somebody that I knew did CrossFit back then, I would have done that, but I didn't. So I had to like start from the beginning,
How has marrying sort of the Peloton and the CrossFit been for you in your fitness journey?
Yeah. So when COVID happened, that was kind of when I started primarily working out from home, because we've always had a home gym, but it definitely wasn't as like stacked as it is now. It was just the basics. And then because of COVID, our gym had shut down and I just decided to stay at home and do all my programming there. And I was like, I wonder, what else I could add that would be just a little bit more fun, because it was honestly just kind of boring doing the CrossFit style workouts by myself. And in November, we had taken our like fake honeymoon because we didn't get to take one because of COVID. And when we were at the resort, they had a Peloton bike. And so I just like jumped on it just for fun and ended up like really liking it. Literally ordered it while we were on vacation. And I was like, well, I'm just going to figure it out as I go, which is usually my personality as well. And at first I did a lot, like too much Peloton when I was trying to do CrossFit. And it was quite a bit for me, like physically. So at this point, I figured out that for like my current schedule, 3 days a week of CrossFit workouts is pretty complementary to the Peloton bike. And then I'll do 2 cycling and running on the alternate days. So I've kind of like gotten into a routine where it's not too much for me, but I was just talking about this in a YouTube video like last week. I think how like when it comes to merging different styles of fitness, you have to really be on top of your recovery and your nutrition. Like all of that stuff is so important when it comes to that. So it's taken me a little bit, but it's doable and I love it.
Yeah. I feel like working out is never really a problem, but I know I struggle with nutrition. Recovery is also something that I never like to do. I don't feel like I ever get enough recovery. How do you decide? How do you like do your workout plans, or like what's your process for finding out how much recovery time you need?
So I for the first important part for me is sleep. So like, I just know that if I sleep less, like anything less than 7 hours is just miserable for me personally. I know some people are like fine on it, but I really feel a difference. So like my number one, like top tier is sleep. But as far as food goes, that's a huge part of recovery because people don't necessarily think about like when they're in a weight loss journey, the being in a caloric deficit is also stress on your body. So like, I would never really recommend people to be in a severe caloric deficit while doing like 2-a-days and Pelotoning and CrossFit and weightlifting and like all of this stuff on top of it, because you're already taking away one component of recovery and then you're adding more stress on top. So it kind of depends on like where you are and what your goals are. But like, if I had somebody who, as a client who like wasn't trying to lose weight and they wanted to do whatever fitness it was, I would always make sure that they're eating enough, like at maintenance or above, because that aids in the recovery. So like sleeping, mobilizing, eating enough, stress levels outside of the gym, you know, people who have really stressful jobs and stressful home lives and stuff, that's also a factor too. It's like a lot of things people don't think of. So I just try to keep like an even recovery feel. But I know like if my body, I can tell when like my body starts to feel trash and I'm like, all right, I need to take it easy this week.
So I know you just had a video, the question I'm about to ask. You just had one, at least within the last 3 months. It might be like within the past few weeks, but you were talking about finding your maintenance. Can you share a little bit about that? And well, before you do that, could you share a little bit about your background in nutrition? Because you're extraordinarily qualified to like have this conversation and maybe touch on people online who are not qualified. I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. So, okay. I started back in undergrad for nutritional science, and to be 100% transparent, that did not set me up for success in any realm to coach people. And obviously this is going to depend on like your school, your university, the professors. Like obviously I'm not saying that's every situation, but it was just so eye-opening to me that like, okay, sure, it was just nutrition and the body, but it wasn't a correlation to help people. And so that was why I moved away from that. And I was like, okay, I want specifics. So I'm precision nutrition certified. But most recently, which I'm about to get, it's my nutritional therapy practitioner. I don't know if they consider it a cert or a degree. I don't know what the proper terminology is, so I don't want to misspeak, but it's one of those two. And it basically it bridges the gap between a nutritionist, which I can call myself, and a registered dietitian / nutritionist. It is a holistic nutritional therapy practitioner. And so the reason why I didn't go dietetic route was because I realized a lot of the clinical nutrition setting is still very old school and very like 1,200 calorie diet. This is your meal plan for this. And it's really like, it needs to come a long way. And I had spoken to quite a few registered dietitians here in Iowa and shadowed. And I was like, oh my God, this is not what I want to do. So my background is not medical healing, diagnosing, treating. It's more, I focus on number one, macros, obviously for athletes who need it. But mostly I've geared my nutritional coaching towards how food can increase your health without like being hyper fixated on it. So essentially fueling your body in a way that benefits your relationship with food and your relationship with your body. And that's kind of where I'm going with the NTP, the reason why I did that. So I've been coaching people since, well, I've been with Ben for almost 6 years. So, and I was on my own for about 1.5 years before that. So roughly 7 years, give or take, I've been coaching people. And it's just I hate diet culture. So what you're saying about like people being unqualified and the misinformation, honestly, the diet and fitness industry is probably one of the most frustrating with the fad diets and the misinformation and just the crap that's out there. So I just always wanted to be like a voice of reason for people who are stuck in the constant dieting, yo-yo dieting, fad dieting, who have poor relationships with their body and with food. And so that's kind of what my goal is as a nutrition coach.
I love that. So I feel like I've spent the last year kind of doing I am terrible at tracking food, not because I can't do it. I'm terrible at tracking food because when I do it, I overdo it. Like I'm hyper like into it. I like get into a zone which is not sustainable. I also feel like until I decided to kind of face this head on, I really thought the only way I could ever lose weight would be like a crash diet. So I went to a medical setting. I went to a bariatric diet center and was put on a protein sparing modified fast. So I was eating like 800 calories a day, doctor supervised. And I lost the weight. I kept it off for years, but when I kept that weight off, I was exercising like 3 to 5 hours a day. And hiking on the weekends.
And so what's very interesting about that, and again, when I say this, like, I am not trying to discredit doctors for anyone that's listening to this, because I know I'm sure if you've been following me, you know people love to pick on everything I say. So I always have to put a disclaimer out. I am not discrediting doctors in any way. But what's interesting to me is the fact that so many of them are still like completely disregarding like metabolic adaptation, which is likely what you've experienced. And it's a huge reason why people will end up losing the weight and then putting it right back on, or they have to increase their energy expenditure so much to compensate for keeping that weight off. Yeah. And there's just point blank, that's not the only way to do it. Sure, it works for, the sake of saying that you lost weight. Absolutely. Is it the healthiest route? I argue no.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so interesting too. And that's something I face a lot of criticism for going very slow on my weight loss journey. And I like tracking. I feel like it's always my goal to track food. And then when I track, I feel myself sliding into it's. I think this kind of goes to an anxiety type thing where it's almost like I anxiety will it to happen. Like I start spiraling. So I'll do great until I'm not. And I like one reason I wanted to share my journey specifically is that I feel like I've wasted so much time of my life doing it wrong because I thought I was in some way broken in a special way that eating a normal diet wouldn't work. And I feel like that's so common. And I thought maybe you could speak on that a little bit and it doesn't have to be like people who are morbidly obese like I am and working from the point that I'm at, but people who are smaller too with only like 10 pounds like that they constantly juggle have that same mindset too, I feel. So I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. It's really interesting. And I just think unfortunately because the diet industry it's about money, they capitalize on it. And so they like to demonize things. And the best way to sell something is to scare people. And that's really what it all comes down to. And that's how a lot of the diets really began. Like if you think about paleo, they're better over the years as far as scaring people. But ultimately it was about the way our ancestors ate and like they were kind of demonizing processed foods and normal foods, for lack of a better term, that most of the world eats. And then you have keto and you have things that like, oh, you don't want to eat carbs and you don't want to eat fats because all of this. And, I have some clients who, to your point, will say like, oh, well, I don't do well with carbs. I gain weight when I eat carbs. And it's like, is that necessarily true? Or is it because when you removed carbs from your diet, you likely removed a large amount of calories, so therefore you're in a deficit? And it's like, I wish that we could teach the foundations to people the way that we teach all these fad diets, because the diets, they're great for a quick buck and they'll work fast, but they're not addressing the underlying issue. And most people just blindly follow stuff without understanding why it works. Like the reason why keto works, and people forget that keto was mainly discovered for children with seizures. So it's not like this magical diet that does anything for people unless medically necessary. For the general population, it's absolutely not necessary. And people will see results on it because let's say they're eating 600 calories worth of carbs per day. They take that out. Well, there you go. That's your 600 calorie deficit that you could have done by splitting up protein, carbs, and fats, respectively, for, those calorie amounts. But I don't know. It sucks to see people getting caught up in like I can't eat this or this causes this. And I always just want people to challenge, like, why do they think that? Why? Where did you get that information from? And how valid is that information? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I think something I've been trying to share regularly is that we need to think critically about things that we're told, which is what you're just saying.
Yes.
And we, at the end of the day, we are responsible for, it doesn't matter. Like I go to the doctor because my foot hurts. Well, the doctor doesn't automatically have my entire medical history. So if they look at it and they're like, oh yeah, your foot is fine, but I know my foot hurts, then I need to find a second opinion. And that's kind of, because you had mentioned the thing about the doctors and not discrediting. It's not a discredit. It's that it's different perspectives, and their perspective, their education, their background might not be what you need, which is why you get second opinions, in my opinion. I think going back to what you were saying. So right now I have been limiting carbs because since moving, which I worked very hard for the last year on normalizing carbs for me. But here I have so much heat edema, and I've noticed when I scale back like grapes, or heavy, like carbs that I probably maybe eat too much, that I'm having less swelling. But I like what you were saying about like finding out your whys. Can you speak to that a little bit more? Like why you're not eating something and why it benefits you or doesn't?
Like me personally, or just people in general?
People in general, either way, I think would be helpful for people to hear.
So a good point that you made about swelling is 100% accurate, and also sodium. But water binds to carbohydrates in the body. So what happens a lot of times, like for water cuts, for example, I'll just use a weightlifting meet example. When we cut hard weight for weightlifting meets, like I'm talking like not safely, this is done for like competition purposes to make weight, you have to reduce your carbs drastically and increase your water throughout like a very strict protocol to essentially like flush the bloating and water out of your system because of the carbohydrates. So because the water molecules essentially bind to carbohydrates, when people cut out the carbohydrates, a lot of times they do notice that they feel less puffy or less bloated. Same goes for sodium. And if you think of a lot of higher carb things like chips or bread or things that are processed and are higher carbs, they're also high in sodium. And sodium will cause the same type of feeling, bloating, puffiness, things like that. So when you cut out those things, that could be an underlying why that isn't necessarily like, oh, the bread is bad, but it has this type of reaction. Like, you know how if you like eat Chinese food because it's really salty, like you feel super heavy and bloated. That's totally normal. And 99% of the time, that's just because of the sodium content. I mean, likely large portions too, but mostly just because of sodium. So unless like there's a true medical reason that someone shouldn't be eating something like, you know, prediabetes or anything that a doctor has said to you, like, hey, you know, your cholesterol, something of that sort, you know, really when it comes down to it, like the general population, in my opinion, in order to create a healthier relationship with food in general, especially when it comes to weight loss, and not have like the people who feel like this food is so bad for you that they end up like restricting it. And then when they restrict it so much, they end up binging on it. I feel it would be better to think about everything like in moderation. And another great example of this that just recently, I think Lane Norton posted a study on this, and it was talking about the artificial sweeteners and how, you know, that's another thing that people love to demonize in the nutrition world. And the study had shown that like the trace amounts were only tested in animals. So like there wasn't any backing to this person's statement anyway. And some people could just take that and run with it. And they'll be like, oh, artificial sweeteners are so bad, I'm cutting them out, never eating them again. And just people do that in the diet industry for some reason so much with things. And I always tell my clients, everything in moderation. The more you're able to practice the moderation, the more success you're going to have in the future. And you're also going to have a better understanding of when it's too much for you. Because what I notice is when people restrict so much, like let's say it's, I don't know, bread or something, and then they end up having some type of binge episode with it, they can't even feel when they're actually full because they're so focused on just like eating the bread because it's been missing out of their diet for so long, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I have a question, but I think going back to, I had asked like 4 questions. I feel like at one time I was like, here you go.
Sorry.
Here's all of your questions. No, you did wonderful. So I'll ask both of these kind of together because I think when you answer one, you may answer the other. how do you help
Okay.
people understand what moderation is? And then how you in your video you recently talked in depth about finding kind of your base metabolic rate, so to speak, on your maintenance. That's what you said. Your maintenance.
Yes. That was totally my fault. I went on a tangent about the restriction.
No, it's all been great. It's all been great.
Yes. Okay. So great question. So when you're thinking about your total daily energy expenditure, and you'll see this reference as TDEE mostly when people are talking about it, that encompasses your workout exercise calories, so your exercise activity, your non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, which is your basically breathing, moving, walking around, living outside of exercise. You have anything that literally just living. So any calories that you burn, exercise, not, you have the thermic effective food, which is small, but it's basically the calories that your body burns to digest the food. There's all these little things that add up to it. People like to use calculators to guess their maintenance. And I try to wean people away from that because it only takes into account most of them, your age, height, and weight, and your goals. And an important thing to note when you're talking about total daily energy expenditure is your basal metabolic rate is included in that. And that means that that's the amount of calories your body burns, just like if you were a vegetable, like you didn't move and it's just like your bodily functions. And this looks different for everybody, but it looks different for people who are obese and for people who have a lot of muscle mass. And the reason why this is important is because, so if I'm 125 pounds and I have, 90 pounds of muscle, let's just say, and somebody else is the same height and the same weight at 125 pounds, but they only have 30 pounds of muscle mass, our basal metabolic rates are going to be significantly different. So we're going to need different amounts of food. So in order to find your total daily energy expenditure, you have to, number one, know that it's going to change a little bit. It's not going to be the exact same every single day, right? Because you might have a harder workout, you might take more steps. So you're going to have like a little bit of a window of like, okay, mine might be from like 2150 to 2400, give or take. So the first thing people need to know is like, it's not just like, oh, I type in this, equation on a calculator and boom, that's your total daily energy expenditure. It will always fluctuate. The more muscle that you gain, the more calories your body burns to exist. So then that's going to increase your basal metabolic rate, which then increases your total daily energy expenditure. So I personally, when I'm trying to find someone's maintenance, I use somewhat of a calculator, but not an internet calculator. There's a couple of different ones that you can use for an estimation. And then I break down protein, carbs, and fats depending on their lifestyle, their body fat percentage. So like a lot of times, unfortunately, if someone is overweight, they'll put in their current weight as the calculator. And like, let's say they're 200 pounds, but they're 5 foot. It's going to tell them to eat 200 grams of protein. And me as a nutrition coach, I know that that's not accurate. That person does not need to be eating 200 grams of protein. So I break it down then based on my nutrition coach side of things, which is like a little bit hard to explain. So I probably won't like go into all that because people are going to be like, okay, what are you talking about?
Sounds good.
But basically the point is we get an estimation of what I would guess to be your total daily energy expenditure. And you try to be as accurate as you can for about 6 to 8 weeks and monitor your weekly average in weight. If your weekly average stays about the same, you're probably right in the ballpark of your maintenance. Again, there's going to be rooms for small fluctuations, but give or take like 3 to 5 pounds is normal for most people fluctuation. And then if you do this and you set this amount and you suddenly start to see the scale decline, you're probably in a deficit. And on the other side of things, if you do it and you start to see the scale increase, you're probably in a surplus. So it's really going to come down to like setting that very specific number, sticking to it, tracking the data, and then adjusting from there. Because most people, I think, they go wrong by just trying to start in a deficit without knowing like where to start from because they don't know what their maintenance is.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's so interesting.
And I feel like, to add to that, I feel like a lot of women especially eat too little and then they try to decrease from that. So it's not going to go anywhere. You just end up gaining weight because your body's just going to try to hold on to everything, I feel like.
And it stinks because that is where a lot of my clients run into issues. I mean, I have someone very close to me who this is the same thing. She has crash dieted for years, and it has gotten down to a point of such little calories that like I told her, I'm like, you can't go any lower. Like nothing is going to happen because you've been at this point for so long. You have no other choice but to increase. And my favorite thing ever is when people like actually listen to me with that, and then they like agree that they're going to eat more. And then they're like, oh wait, like you're right, this works. And I'm like, I know, because you're not supposed to eat that little.
That's
Exactly.
awesome.
I feel like that's a common thing in the fitness or wellness world, or like people trying to be healthy. Just so much misinformation, like you said.
Totally.
So true. So other question was how, and I probably should just ask one question at a time. I just get excited. And so I'm like, here's all the questions. Earlier you were talking about moderation. And by the way, just as an aside for those of you that are listening, there's always going to be a blog post attached to any of these episodes. And I'm going to link specific videos where Amanda has talked about those things, because she has a few videos where she kind of goes in depth on those as well. So if you want to check that out. But how do you help people understand what moderation is? Like, what does that conversation look like?
Yes. So this is basically where the Thrive portion of Black Iron Nutrition. So for those people who don't know, I coach two different types of nutrition coaching, one being macros and one being more intuitive eating. And that's what the Thrive program is. And so that was kind of how like the Thrive program came to be, is it's like, how do we teach somebody how to live in moderation, in balance? Because in my opinion, that's a really difficult thing to teach, because moderation, in my opinion, looks different for everybody. Because one person, for them, they might be afraid of eating 2 slices of pizza because they're afraid that pizza is going to make them fat. And the other person might struggle eating the entire box of pizza. So you need to set goals for different people when it comes to moderation. Because for the first person, my explanation of moderation would be 2 pieces of pizza is not going to make you fat, just like eating 2 pieces of lettuce or whatever isn't going to make you lose weight. But on the other hand, I try to set goals of moderation in increments, because teaching moderation, I think, works best in small steps. And so just using the pizza example, if I were to teach moderation to that person, I would try to say, okay, so if you find yourself wanting to eat this whole box, eat your, I don't even know how many slices are in a piece of pizza, whatever. You usually have 10. Today, I really want you to try to have 8 and see if you can do it. And this starts to work because it's not an extreme, no pizza for you. You can have it, but let's try to dial it in a little bit more. And like on the other side of things too, for the other person, it's like, okay, you never had pizza before. Let's just try to have that and see how you feel. And I think just knowing how your client is, or in this case, knowing yourself, like for the listeners, what you feel you personally need to have moderation with, and what are some small steps that you can take to get there. Because I think most people, they're like, well, I'm cutting it out. And they usually fail, and then the cycle starts again. So instead of completely removing, moderation would look like, okay, I'm not going to eat out every night a week. I'm going to try to only eat out 3 times a week. And I usually work out once a week. I'm going to try to work out 3 times a week. And then those little goals become easier, so then they can increase them or decrease them, whatever the case may be. And I just think that it needs to be done based on what you're trying to achieve, and in small achievable goals too, because I think that's what makes people successful, like chipping away at something basically.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I think going back to like not demonizing food or anything specific.
Well, yes, but I will say, like, as a side note, the binge eating, when there's someone who I truly feel is genuinely struggling with an eating disorder, I will refer them out to a psychologist or a therapist. I am not qualified to treat eating disorders. But it's hard because sometimes people will have like a random binge on something. And in that case, we like try to get to the bottom of what's going on instead of, well, here's your therapist. Because sometimes people won't follow through with that either. And I kind of want to, I don't know if quantify, I guess, is the best word, but like, it's going to depend on what that person can handle mentally, which is also, as you know, like I'm a very big proponent of that. Like, I don't want to do something or offer a moderation advice to somebody that's going to harm their mental health. So if that client to me is like, I don't know how much I'm eating. Like, this is an all out binge and I'm just eating everything under the sun and I'm really struggling. It was the blackout. That's the kind of client that I'm going to refer to a psychologist or an eating disorder specialist. And I really do think for those of you who are listening, if that is something that you're struggling with, like, you should reach out to a professional eating disorder counselor or therapist. Like, nobody on Instagram, no nutritionist. I'm hesitant even to say registered dietitian sometimes, because as you saw, they put you on an 800 calorie restrictive diet. And how is that not triggering for somebody that's struggling with an eating disorder? You know what I mean?
You were saying about, not finding someone on Instagram or on YouTube and not leaning on someone because they've been through it. Because when you have any sort of disorder period, other people's disorders are not yours. Like, my weight loss journey is no one else's weight loss journey. So you can glean things from like watching somebody else. But as you were saying, seeking the help in the most qualified places is the route to go there.
Absolutely.
So I kind of want to segue. Trying to think of the best way to segue, because it's probably not with a big smile. But I know I love puppies. So, I think that's where the smile comes from. Cause I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about puppies. I could relate a lot. That video was very hard. When you were going through it with your pups, it was hard for me to watch, because about 2 years ago, our neighbor had like a bull mastiff mix, and it was 7 months old, and it found its way. We had like a 7-foot fence. And then on top of that, they had like a wire fence that went up, and the dog found its way.
Like a barbed wire fence?
It wasn't barbed wire. It was just like a chain link fence. That's the appropriate term. But there was a tiny space in between, and I had Julio. He was outside, and I was out there with him, and that's my male dog. And the dog was already bigger than Julio. Julio was 80 pounds, and he managed to so fast. I saw it coming. But Julio was like going to the bathroom, and I'm trying to get Julio to just go ahead and come inside, because I knew it was going to be bad. But that dog hopped the fence. It bit me, and it attacked Julio. And then I went into like more of a mom mode instead of like a rational thinking mode. And that's how I got bit, like trying to like get them apart, right? So a horrible experience. Just 2 days ago, I was walking my dog, and someone was also walking their dog, but like it kind of came out of the side, and I still like kind of freak out. So I would love it if you would share a little bit of what happened and how that's affected you, but even more than that, how you've worked with your babies to kind of overcome it.
I literally have goosebumps. Just even, I feel for you. I feel for anybody who's been through this situation, not fitness or nutrition at all topic. This is can I curse on this podcast?
Do whatever you want.
This is a shit. God. Okay, so I'm going to try to make this as short as possible, because I don't want to bore people with depressing information. However, we have 3 dogs. Our third that we brought into the family was a complete stray from Texas. She was on the euthanasia list, emaciated. She looked like she had just given birth to a litter of puppies, which we're assuming she was a breed and dump, because she appears to be a full-bred American Staffordshire Terrier, whatever. So our shelter that I volunteered at pulled her. Nobody wanted her because she was emaciated, heartworm positive. Her boobies were to the floor. She was a sad case. And I just connected with her, took her home, fostered her, failed, and now she's part of the family. So that's her little backstory. She got along amazingly with our other two. We did the, proper introductions. She has her own room, her apartment, as we call it, as I'm sure you know. And, everything was just swimmingly for a year. Well, when she started her second round of heartworm treatment, she was on prednisone and some other steroids and antibiotics, which are very intense. The treatment for heartworm is super intense. It's like chemo for dogs. And she wasn't feeling well. And the two of them were outside. And when they came through the door, I don't know what happened. I'll still never know to this day, but Eliza I'm assuming Bailey bumped her in some capacity, and Eliza turned and it was probably the worst thing. I've never been in the middle of a dog fight. And I did the same thing you did. I dove right in between the two of them, got bit. It was like an absolute disaster. And I just remember it was like such a chaotic and terrifying experience because there were no like red flags. And as somebody who's had dogs my whole life and volunteered at multiple shelters and I'm much more knowledgeable now than I was then, but even then there wasn't anything that was like, oh, red flags. Like we never dealt with any like food resource guarding or anything where I was like, oh, this is probably going to be bad. You know what I mean? It was just like very out of nowhere, which as you know, anybody who suffers from anxiety, that kind of stuff is not good for us. Like we need to be prepared. And so like, this was just really traumatic. And not only did it happen once, but it happened twice. A week after the first fight, it happened again on a walk because a dog lunged at them. And it was awful. I felt like time stopped. And I was in the middle of this fight, rolling around on the ground with them. I don't even know. One of them was attached to my arm because they didn't know what was going on, who they were biting. Eliza had to get stitches in her eye. And I just remember coming home that night and laying on the floor, like literally right there, bawling my eyes out, being like, what even just happened? Like, it's such a weird feeling as a dog parent. And I'm sure if anybody who has dogs that they treat like children, like I don't have kids, so these are my kids. It was just like really heartbreaking to watch on so many, everybody involved basically. And it started a almost 9-month journey of rehabbing the two of them, which is still like, as you can see, the baby gate, we're still not where we were before. And it took the biggest hit on my mental health that I was not prepared for. And I don't think I was in such a bad depression between November to February, honestly. Like, I don't think I've ever been that bad. And I just like kept, replaying. There was a lot of PTSD involved. I was having nightmares, not sleeping. The first 3 weeks after the fight, I could barely eat. Like, it was so awful. And it was just terrible. So that was basically the story of what happened with the two of them. And obviously we kept her, Eliza, because of her traumatic past. And as somebody who has a traumatic childhood myself, I was not going to just give her away because of that. And so we worked with it, and that's kind of where we are now.
So I do think the purpose of our podcast is we want to encourage people, we want to empower people, and we want to motivate people. And while it might not seem like it's like fitness or health related at first, there are just things in everyone's life. Most recently for me, it was the dogs. I also had like a pretty bad leg injury that happened out of nowhere. With you having like the dogs, everyone has things that happen, and they cause those PTSD feelings where like you wake up and you feel like maybe it was just a dream that it happened. Maybe that didn't really happen. Or like I never in a million years would have thought, like I thought they were going to fight to the death. Because eventually like I was hyperventilating. My leg injury was more fresh, so I couldn't really put my weight on both legs super well yet. And so I was just like hyperventilating, screaming. Someone was checking their mailbox like 2 blocks over and heard me screaming because I was just screaming. And then they came and they sprayed the dogs with water. Yeah. So, I think it's been, I don't like that this happened to you. I like the story though, that it happened and it was hard. And not only was it hard, but because of other compounding issues, it kind of put you in one of the darkest places in your life. And yet you still shared it. And that benefits people who suffer. Because I think a lot of times we think we're the only ones with the issues that we face.
100%.
And so
absolutely.
How do you find the courage to share your stories, especially while you're going through it? Like, that's just amazing. And you do it in a way, because I feel like I just went back and rewatched that video and you were like, I'm not doing this for attention. And it was 100% obvious that you were not doing it for attention, but you do it so articulately where it pulls me to where you are in that moment and I can see it. It's not in a bad way. I have like I understand it. And then I also understand that so many of us, especially in that moment, feel so singular.
Yes. Such a great way to put that. And I love that you say that, because this is not just the dog fight. This is literally the reason why I started social media. And back when I was on Tumblr, before Instagram really took off, I shared a lot about my mental health. Granted, I was young, so I didn't fully understand, but I always wanted to know. And I have felt like this for a large portion of my life. I would always be like, am I the only one that feels this way? Like, why the fuck am I like this? Like, there have to be other people that think this and feel this. Because I personally felt very alone and alienated. And, I don't drink and I have never done any type of like partying. So like, I didn't have a college life experience. I never lived in a dorm. I just felt different. And like, I always, in my going through of like anxiety and depression, I was like, is there something wrong with me? Like, what is the problem? And when I would share, other people would then be like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one that felt this way. And I would be like, me too. And then it was just like this very comforting feeling of like, hey, it sucks, but like, we're not alone in this. And so that was kind of the same thing. Like, even though fitness, it's not like, I mean, sometimes it sucks, but like, sometimes it's just like, hey, I'm a beginner too. Or like, let me share with you, my start. And I'm sure you're in the same position right now, which by the way, I just have to tell you, my best friend, sorry, you're going to have to edit that out.
Oh, it's fine. I think everybody watching, my hope, just as an aside, because I feel like I always need to say this, is that anyone listening is listening like while they're walking, like walking their dog or like cleaning their house, like that they're being active and it's just real life. We're just living our lives. Dogs are barking. Babies might make baby noises in the background. Well,
Coco Melon in the background.
She's like, I can't hear it. Yeah. So anyways, I was always just like, I feel like we as humans, naturally, we want connection with other people. And a lot of times on social media, as you know, we look at these people's lives and it can a lot of times make ourselves feel bad about our own lives. And I used to do that when I would see like normal, for lack of a better term. I'd be like, why do none of these people have problems? Like, why am I the only one who wants to drive my car off a cliff? That's an exaggeration. Please don't put me in a mental institution. I don't mean that right now. I meant back then. But like, I would say that. I'd be like, why is everybody so happy? And like, I'm the only one that's depressed. And well, the more I talked about it, the more I was like, okay, first of all, other people feel the same way. Just nobody's talking about it. And there's a lot of things that people do not talk about for either fear of embarrassment. I had this same issue with my family. I started talking about the issues with my dad, my biological dad, and some of the things that I went through. And my own family was literally mad at me for talking about it because it made them look bad. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is literally the problem. Like, this is why people don't talk about stuff and they're embarrassed or their family's embarrassed or whatever. And so I started doing it because I was like, I want other people, when they look at my page, like, I don't want them to see like, oh, a fitness influencer. Like, that's awesome if I motivate you like in the gym or something, because I just genuinely love fitness. But like, more importantly, I would love for people to look at me and be like, oh, she's just like me. Like, she's a mess. Like, she's anxious, she's depressed, but she's still freaking going. And like, she's funny. Like, I just want people to think of me as like their friend, because when I was that person looking for people on social media, I didn't have it and I felt very alone. And so like, I try really hard to like interact with the people who comment to me and in my DMs and stuff, because like, I've had people tell me like, I'm so glad you shared that. Like, thank you for sharing that. Even if it, like, to me, it wasn't really a big deal, it helped them. And then I'm like, that's awesome. I love that helped. So that's really my reason why, because I just want people to know, like, yeah, I might have followers, but like, it ain't shit. Cause like, you don't want to be inside my head. Trust me when I tell you.
I like it. Well, I need a new phrase. I like it is probably not the optimal phrase there. I don't know what would be, but I think it's an amazing thing that you do, because it's so easy to like marginalize ourselves, our experience, and just be like, oh, or other people's, like, oh, there's, Amanda, and she's, super like beast mode CrossFit, so strong, like clearly she has no problems. Like, people do that. We put that on other people, and then that sometimes we weaponize the stories we make up in our head about other people to use against ourselves to make ourselves feel worse. Yeah. So I love that you share your story. I think it's inspiring and empowering on so many levels. And I hope that anyone listening that feels alone feels a little bit less alone hearing that it's something we all go through. And even if it hasn't been a lifelong thing, it's not normalized to talk about postpartum depression, or any disordered thinking. It's getting there. I think people are talking about it more, but it's still not common to just, and it affects everyone in some regard, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And I also have to tell you really quick, I told my friend, literally my best friend of all time, she's my other half. I told her, I was like, oh, I'm doing this podcast. She's like, oh my God, I love her. I'm subscribed to her YouTube channel. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, bitch, you've been holding out on me. Why did you tell me? I just have to tell you that because I thought that was so cute. Like, what a small world. That's so awesome. And like, that's the thing though, like, so I love that. Literally, she became my best friend because of that. Like, because I was always open talking about mental health, and like, she is like the other half of me, like duplicated. Like it's just so crazy. Like the internet can do really shitty things, but it can also do really cool things.
I completely agree with that. Me and Yenna, we work out. Like we have awesome workouts. So we really push each other too. Like Yenna's the best workout buddy. If you ever get the chance to work out with my friend, you should. So the rest of the day I don't move enough. And you recently did like a whole video. It was called, Why You're Working Out and Not Losing Weight. I think that was it. Yep. Can you share a little bit about what you were talking about in that video?
Yes. Basically, long story short, people get hyper fixated on their intensity of their workouts. And they're like, I'm killing my workouts. Like, I'm working out so hard, I'm not losing weight. And a perfect example of this is people taking a CrossFit class who work at a desk job. Again, nothing wrong with that, but they're overestimating how much they're burning throughout the day. So like, yeah, you might take a kick-ass CrossFit class, but if you're sitting at a desk from 9 to 5 or sitting primarily throughout your day, you need to do something. It doesn't even need to be like working out, just walking more or lowering your food to compensate essentially. Otherwise, you're working out at a level that's maintaining your current weight, which, nothing wrong with that, but it's frustrating for people who think that working out automatically equates to weight loss. And that started because I had a girl that told me, she's like, I'm doing CrossFit, but I'm not losing weight. And like in my head, I'm like, well, that doesn't really mean anything. Like you could do a marathon and still not lose weight. You know what I mean? Like working out doesn't always mean you're going to lose weight. So I think people need to remember, sure, the 1 hour a day is important, kind of, but the 23 hours outside of that 1 hour workout is much more important.
Yeah, I agree so much with that. And I think too, it's more than just lowering your calories, because kind of like what we were talking about earlier, there's only so much you can lower. So I think getting that movement in your day in other ways is so important. Are there ways that you suggest doing that, getting more movement in your day?
Yeah. Okay, so my favorite recommendations for people, one is if you struggle with remembering, I set an alarm. So I tell people to set an alarm every hour if they can. And I know sometimes this can be a privileged statement because not everyone has the ability to get up and move around. So that's kind of like tricky too. But if that's not possible, a standing desk, they also make these little small, compact, foldable treadmills, no joke, that are like so thin and they're just like a moving belt that you can put at your standing desk and walk if you're not physically able to get up and move from your work location. Parking at the farthest end of the parking space when you're going somewhere. I always, if you're somebody that's working from home, I recommend trying to get up and do one chore per hour, whether that's folding laundry, cleaning the floors, cleaning something, doing the dishes, whatever, doing active in some way, vacuuming. This is really silly, but I swear I tell my clients to do this. Like when they're doing something, to like put on music and dance while they're doing it. Trust me, number one, good for your mood. Okay. Don't knock it till you try it. But it also just like gets you moving. Naturally, people like me who are like fidgety, like I'm sure people are watching this, they're like, bro, stop moving your hands. But like being fidgety is also, as silly as it sounds, like being expressive and moving around, getting up, stretching, even something as simple as getting up and moving, like doing 5 air squats, moving your hips around, stretching. It's crazy how long people will sit like this and just like not move. Yeah. And like you can for sure add little teeny bits of movement here and there. Or like worst case scenario, if you really can't at your work, if it's not feasible, you have to then try to figure out, okay, can I wake up early and can I go for a 1 mile walk in the morning before work? That's another thing that I would just suggest is like start your day off getting your steps in. Cause like that's what I did today because I knew I was going to be sitting for the entire rest of the day. So I just did my longer walk earlier and then I'm just like kind of chilling because I know I can't really get up and then do my steps right now. I'm on podcast.
Yeah. Let's see. I love that. I love just getting in. I think so. I did something called 75 hard, which is very controversial. I did it in a very low key way though. Like I knew I wasn't getting movement in. So walking for 45 minutes and then doing a second workout, which was either working out with Jenna or doing like yoga. And that's just what I did. And just adding that movement was helpful. Then we moved and I got anxiety and had to deal with my emotions a little bit. Totally. But I've been plateauing for about, because of how everything lined up, for about a month and a half. It's like the same, like 4 pounds, like I'm just bouncing. But I kind of am okay with it. Like I haven't gotten to where I haven't had the, I'm not going to stay here, if that makes sense. But at first I decided, this was something else I wanted to talk about. Because literally, I think I was looking back. I decided to pause my weight loss. When I had family in town, we were in the process of buying a house. We didn't have our orders, so we're military. So the military gives you orders and then you move. So we didn't have our orders, but our husbands were in school together. That's why we were in Missouri. Okay. So we knew we were moving. So I decided to pause my weight loss mindset, not my journey. I didn't quit. I wasn't like, okay, throwing all of the habits and all of like the work that I've done away. And I'm just going to, eat pizza and Oreos and not work out. Yeah. It was literally just pausing that weight loss mindset. And I feel like recently you did a video on that idea of just taking a pause, especially 100%. On like a weight loss journey.
So important. And I think more people need to take a break from dieting than they think, because especially the people who are chronic dieters, it can be so beneficial to just give yourself a break. In weightlifting, we call this a deload week. And a lot of times when we're doing like tracking macros, we do a diet break or a refeed week, something like that. I think awesome. And it's really important because it gives you the mental break of not having to deal with the stress. It gives your body the physical break of not having to deal with the stress. And it's really important that more people do that. And there's nothing wrong with it. Like you can't think it's realistic to do something literally forever. Like one thing I always tell people, and this is something a therapist said to me years ago, and I will quote it till I die. I always say, every single thing is temporary. Everything. So, you might love doing this. You might love losing weight, all this stuff, but you're not going to be in this exact same mindset, perspective, life, physically at this moment ever again. So it's unlikely that you will be able to maintain that forever. So it's okay to take breaks. There's nothing wrong with it. I do it all the time. And I also have taken breaks where I'm like, I quit CrossFit. I'm never doing it again. And I just stopped doing CrossFit.
Yeah. No, I love that. Because I think for me personally on the journey that I'm in sort of with my extreme dieting and experience, like the fact that I have just kind of paused without intention of losing or change. I haven't like spent the time and energy to like figure out what I'm going to switch up has been very helpful for me. And I think you're the only person I've heard really talk about something like that on online anyway. I'm sure there's many other people, but you were the first I think that I've heard since I've done it. It's probably like cars that people drive, like until you drive like a Toyota, you never notice how many Toyotas there are on the road. You know what I mean?
Yep, totally.
So
Yes.
kind of coming towards an end of our little conversation, what advice do you have for our listeners? Just anything that's on your mind, on your heart that you'd like to share.
So I heard this on a TikTok the other day, and I wish I saved it, but I need to find this girl. I can't even credit her because I lost the TikTok and I'm so upset about it, but I'll try to explain it. She was basically saying that this moment of time that we're in and any moment before this doesn't exist at all. And any moment in front of us doesn't exist at all either. And the plane of universe that we're in is only this exact minute and second because everything else exists in our brain. So the only real thing is right now. And you can literally take that and apply that to anything. Fitness, nutrition, life, mental health, dogs, anything. I mean, the dogs are a prime example of that. I kept obsessing over the fact that we weren't where we were and I were not where we want to be. And I know it's hard for us because we have anxiety and depression and it makes us sad to think about those things, but like you are not there. You'll never be there. So in weight loss or in food or whatever, you cannot be upset that you were once this or you were once that or you want to be here or you want to be there because it literally doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. It only matters right now in this moment of where you are. And I swear, like, I have thought about that at least 5 times a day since I heard it because I'm like, it's true. Like, yes, we all are anxious and we all worry naturally. That's a normal human feeling and it's valid. But like, if you're letting that ruin or control like your weight loss journey or your mental health journey or whatever, it's so much more difficult than to just say like, okay, I know I'm not where I want to be right now, but like, eventually that person will exist, but doesn't exist right now. So I need to focus on the person that does exist right now. So I just really liked that.
I love that. That's powerful.
That's a really, really good quote. And like,
right?
Nice to like stay in the moment. And if you fall off today, just keep going where you know.
Yeah, because guess what? That person, yes, because that person that fell off doesn't exist tomorrow. Like exactly. There's a difference in my opinion because I used to hate when people would be like, oh, just like stay in the moment, like enjoy the moment. But like when you say that it doesn't exist, for whatever reason, that just resonated with me more because like it doesn't. Like yesterday literally doesn't exist. It's gone. Like, isn't that weird?
Like you can't get it back anymore. So why dwell on it? Just keep going.
Yeah.
It's funny, you know, because you, I feel like we go through it with our emotions and stuff. Like we just unleash, like it's that kind of friendship where we can just let things out. But like there's this phrase and you say it all the time and it's kind of like the same for me. You'll just be like, oh, well, I mean, like either one of us, it doesn't matter which one of us, it'll be like, da, 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 and I can't believe yada, 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 yada. And then it'll be like, oh, well, it's like the same as like namaste. It's like a, I don't know, because it's true. It's like the moments that matter are right now, and yesterday only exists in our mind, which is why if you do have, if you have a propensity to look at things negatively, starting small and trying to reframe things, because you can taint like anything that has happened or will happen with that perspective too. That's really powerful. It's a great, if you find that girl on TikTok, you should share it and at me.
I have been waiting. I honestly might make a TikTok and ask people to blow it up to find her. I swear to God, because I thought I saved it and I guess I didn't. And I've been dying to see her.
Yeah.
I swear it just glitches because I feel like I should have so much more saved content on my TikTok and it just doesn't.
I swear to you, I thought that before. I'm like, I know I hit that like button on that. Why is it not there?
Like I saved it. I specifically saved to my favorites. Why is it not there? Like, has happened so many times.
That's a great quote. Would you like to tell us a little bit about where people can find you and the services that you offer.
Yes. So every single thing on my social media platform is just Simply Mander. Pretty easy. If you do want to follow the dogs, if you are a dog person, the dog page is Simply Snooters. Honestly, my favorite account. I love it. If you really love like wholesome dog content, but also educational dog content. And I am a coach and soon to be on August 3rd an NTP with Black Iron Nutrition. Unfortunately, I do have a wait list right now, and I am only currently taking Thrive clients, but there are so many wonderful coaches at Black Iron Nutrition. Like, I would literally recommend anybody, if you are somebody who does want to track macros, there's tons of different tracks you can take: Condensed Lifestyle, Lifestyle Plus, Thrive. We even have an outdoor. We have a pregnancy postpartum. Like, there are so many wonderful tracks, and also wonderful and very, very high qualified people that coach them. So really anybody at the company I would recommend. But that's where you can find me nutrition coaching wise. So.
And just for the people in the back, what is MPT?
Oh, sorry. Nutritional Therapy Practitioner.
NTP. I got it backwards. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us. This has been so fun. So fun.
Oh my gosh. Dude. Yes. And I think what we should do is do like a YouTube collab. Like, if you ever want to like try CrossFit or like something like that, I think we should 100% do like, oh, Mander's coaches me doing CrossFit, and I'll like come to you and teach you CrossFit.
That would be awesome. Well, and Yenna's going to DC, so we do a CrossFit workout every month, and we time ourselves. It's one of my like non-scale points of measure. We do something called Kettle Hill that Yenna found. You want to describe it, Yenna?
I heard it a couple years ago online. I was just looking for kettlebell workouts, kind of like CrossFit style. I don't know where because I can't even find it anymore. So
no, I've scoured the internet. The only thing I can find is my stuff on Kettle Hill. So it's a 5 exercises for time, and you do 16 reps of why is my mind just blanking? So 16 kettlebell swings, 14 kettlebell squats. So you do 2 kettlebells, then 12 lunges, walking lunges. Is that right? Then 10 push presses, and then 80-meter farmer's carry. So
yeah, that's kind of CrossFit-y.
Yeah, or a CrossFit workout, but we should totally do it. Yenna is moving to DC, which is only like 4 hours for me. So we should plan that. That would be amazing.
I would totally do it for sure. You just let me know.
I will.
We need to plan that.
I'm so excited. Well, thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you.
It was so good.
Fun. Bye, girl.
Bye.
Recording stopped.
You can hear him.
That was so fun.
I like her. I love like that it's actually like science and not just like, I believe this is the thing.
Yeah. Spirit fingers. That was so much fun. I loved talking with her. She is amazing. Her channel is amazing. So I highly recommend checking her out. Her Instagram posts are always awesome. She's just a lovely human, and she's so educated, especially with nutrition, CrossFit.
I think that's what social media needs.
Absolutely.
People are actually
Absolutely.
like, themselves and not fake.
And people who take the time to educate themselves. Because it's not just like she's just passionate about it. Like, I mean, she's dedicated her life to researching and learning and growing as far as nutrition goes. So I love that. I love that. Well, thank you guys for watching with us. We love you. Thanks for letting us be your little workout buddies on your HIIT podcast. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.